What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue here with my 2024 college football schedule preview and projected record series. The Arizona State Sun Devils are up next, and before we preview their schedule for 2024 and give them an early projected record based on how tough their schedule is, let's take a look back at what Arizona State did in 2023. Here are my projections and predictions last year for Arizona State. My projection had them at 3-9, and then my prediction for this team was also 3-9, and that's exactly what the Sun Devils did last year. This team coming off a 3-9 season in 2023, a pretty rough year for them, obviously with a first-year head coach, and then, of course, the Pac-12 was really tough for them last year, but they're now heading to the Big 12 next year. It was their final year, of course, in the Pac-12 last season in 2023, but here was the schedule from last year for Arizona State. You look at their non-conference schedule, they played Southern Utah, Oklahoma State, and Fresno State. So yeah, their non-conference schedule ended up being really tough. They had to play Oklahoma State out of the Big 12, and then of course Fresno State, which ended up being a really good Group of 5 team. They lost both of those games there in the non-conference, and the rest of the schedule was just history from there. The Pac-12 again was very tough last year. They lost to USC, California, Colorado, Washington, Utah, Oregon, and Arizona. So their Pac-12 schedule obviously was very tough, but they were able to win a couple games against Washington State and UCLA, so at least they didn't go winless in their final year in the Pac-12. But again, Arizona State's now heading to the Big 12 in 2024. Let's now look ahead to that 2024 schedule. So here's that schedule for Arizona State, and before we go game by game, let's take a look at who they will play in the non-conference for this upcoming season. So you look at this non-conference schedule, they will play Wyoming, Mississippi State, Texas State here on the road. So you look at this non-conference schedule, it is another tough non-conference schedule for the Sun Devils. They'll play Wyoming, a pretty good team out of the Mountain West Conference from last year. That'll be a home game, but it won't be an easy game there for the Sun Devils. And then you got Mississippi State here, of course, out of the SEC. That is going to be a very tough game. The good news is you get that game at home, but still, against an SEC team out of the non-conference, that's going to be a very tough game. And then Texas State, it won't be another easy game here for Arizona State. Texas State actually upsetted a Big 12 team last year in Baylor. So again, a pretty tough non-conference schedule here for Arizona State for the upcoming season. Let's go back to the schedule now here and go game by game now for the Sun Devils. They start things off with Wyoming here, of course, on August 31st. Then they'll play Mississippi State here on September the 7th. And then they'll play Texas State here on the road on September the 12th on a Thursday. So they will play all their non-conference games in the first 3 weeks of the season, and then after that they'll go on the road to open up conference play on September the 21st. They actually got back-to-back road games there with Texas State and Texas Tech, but they don't get it they don't really have enough time to prepare. Or actually, they do have enough time to prepare for Texas Tech, but not enough time for Texas State, because right after that Mississippi State game, they only have a few days to get ready for that Texas State game. But they get a bye week after that Texas Tech game before playing Kansas here at home on October the 5th. Then they'll play Utah here at home as well on October the 11th on a Friday night. And then they'll play Cincinnati here on the road on October 19th. And then they get their second bye week here before playing Oklahoma State here on the road on November 2nd. And then they'll play UCF here at home on November 9th. Then on the road at Kansas State here on November 16th. Then BYU at home on November 23rd. And then they close things out, of course, with a rivalry game on the road at Arizona on November 30th. So that is the schedule for Arizona State for 2024. This is a pretty tough schedule here for the Sun Devils. It's not horrible, but they do have a tough non-conference schedule, like I mentioned. Wyoming and Mississippi State to start out the first 2 weeks. And then you got Kansas, Utah, both here in the Big 12. Those are 2 home games at least here for the Sun Devils. But they do got to play on the road at Oklahoma State and Kansas State. Those are probably the toughest road games here on this schedule. And then you got Arizona in the rivalry game, obviously. They don't have to play West Virginia. That's, of course, good news. But either way, this is a very tough schedule here for Arizona State. So let's now get to the projection here for the Sun Devils. This is the scale that I use here for my projections. If it's a 1% game in the red, again, that percentage is going to count as an automatic loss, and then your 20% games here in the orange are going to be games where Arizona State will be about a double-digit underdog. 40% games in the yellow are going to be games where Arizona State will be a clear underdog in by about a touchdown, and then your 50-50 games will, of course, stay in the white. Games I think can really go either way. And then your 60% games here in the purple are going to be games where Arizona State will be favored by about a touchdown, and then your 80% games here in the blue are going to be games where the Sun Devils will be favored by double digits as well. And then your 99% games here in the green are pretty much your easy wins and also your automatic wins here in that percentage. And normally I do start with the green games, but for the first time, and I believe like in all these projections, maybe other projections out there, I'm not going to start with those green games because I don't have any easy wins on here for Arizona State, but I do have one game on here in the blue which is also counted as a win, just barely, like by 10 to 14 points. That's going to be the game here on the road at Texas State. I think Arizona State will be a double-digit underdog there on the road at Texas State, even though Texas State defeated a Big 12 team last year in Baylor. But still, either way, playing on the road, that's the reason why I put this game in the blue. And just the fact that Texas State beat Baylor last year, that's also the reason why this game is in the blue. This game was very close to being put in the purple, but I'm going to stick with it here and put it in the blue for right now. And these blue games are also counted as wins, but not very much like the green games are. But I think they'll be favored by 10 to 14 points, by double digits, like by a couple touchdowns, like 10 to 14 points, somewhere in that range. And like I said, I don't have any green games on here, and I also don't have any purple games on here for the Sun Devils. So let's now go to the games where I think Arizona State will be underdogs in. I don't have any red games on here, but I do have a couple games on here in the orange for Arizona State, which are going to be games where the Sun Devils will be double-digit underdogs. And those two games are going to be here on the road at Oklahoma State and then Kansas State here, both on the road as well. These are very tough road games here in the Big 12, but I think Arizona State will still be at least a double-digit underdog in both of those games. I can't put them as automatic losses, though, because the Big 12, again, is just going to be so competitive, and there's going to be a lot of great games this year in the Big 12. This conference is just going to be so fun to watch, and again, a lot of these teams are going to beat up on each other, but the reason why both of these games are in the orange, though, is just because they're both on the road in very tough environments. Plus, Oklahoma State and Kansas State are two teams that could be favorites to win it all in the Big 12 this year. And then we go to the games where I think the Sun Devils will be clear underdogs in by about a touchdown. I got three games on here in the yellow where I think the Sun Devils are going to be like 6, 7, 8 point underdogs. And those games are Texas Tech, Kansas, and Utah. Two games, in the yellow at home, and then, of course, one on the road. That Texas Tech game, I was very close to making it a 50-50 game, but I'm going to stick with it here and put it in the yellow just because it's on the road. And then Kansas and Utah. I think Kansas and Utah are both more talented teams than the Sun Devils are, but both of these games are at home, so I think Arizona State does have a chance to win one of these games here in the yellow. Imagine if they win all three of them, which I don't think that's going to be possible, but if they do win all three, then that's going to get their season back on track. But again, these are going to be very tough games regardless, but I think either way, Arizona State will be clear underdogs in all three of them by at least a touchdown, again by 6, 7, 8 points, somewhere in that range. And then I got 6 total 50-50 games on here for the Sun Devils with Wyoming, Mississippi State, Cincinnati, UCF, BYU, and then Arizona here on the road. So 2 games in the non-conference that are 50-50 games. Again, Wyoming and Mississippi State, those are very tough games to start out the year here for the Sun Devils. Wyoming, again, a good group of 5 team from last year in the Mountain West, and then Mississippi State. It's a new era down there for the Bulldogs, but, still, either way, this will be a talented team. I think both of these teams are pretty even, and also these programs are pretty even as well. And then Cincinnati, UCF, and BYU, these are 3 even matchups here for the Sun Devils. They can probably win all 3 of these games at least. And then you got Arizona here on the road, a rivalry game. You never know what can happen. So those are all my 50-50 games here for Arizona State. Let's now get a projected record here for the Sun Devils for 2024. Again, this is not my official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough the schedule is. So we count that one blue game as a win, and then you average out those 2 games in the orange at 20%. Then you average out those 3 yellow games here at 40%, and then you average out all these 50-50 games here at 50%, and the projected record for Arizona State looks like it's going to be at 4-8. So that's what the projected record is for Arizona State. So a better projection compared to the 3-9 projection last year. But the reason why the projection was 3-9 was because Arizona State had a first-year head coach, and the fact that the Pac-12 is going to be very tough for them as well. But here in the Big 12, the projection is 4-8. I can definitely see them going 5-7. It would really shock me if the Sun Devils did make it to a bowl game this year. But again, the Big 12 is going to be so competitive, and a lot of great games are going to happen, and a lot of these teams are going to beat up on each other. So I can definitely see Arizona State possibly making it to a bowl game. I mean, it probably won't be enough, but either way, if they go 3-9 again, that would probably be a disappointment here for Arizona State. But again, the projection is 4-8 as of right now here for Arizona State for 2024. So give me your thoughts on this Arizona State team down in the comments below, as that is my projected record here for Arizona State for 2024. And let me guys know what you think about this team, and what do you think their projected record is for 2024. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.